And now back to our top story. APRA has been slammed with calls for it to change its culture. Business reporter Chris Kohler joins us live. And Chris, this is quite an alarming report. There's some pretty serious recommendations they've said they'll take on board, but this really goes to a lot of structural issues with APRA.
Absolutely. Crashing back to earth here, Annalise, with this one. APRA has absolutely had this report handed to it. It's a sweeping report here. The APRA Capability Review, led by Graeme Samuel, who people will remember previously led the ACCC, sweeping recommendations to how APRA oversees the $2.8 trillion Australian superannuation industry. Chief among which is that it ought to be spun out, the overseeing of superannuation, into its own separate division within APRA, which Wayne Byres would not be in charge of. Now, this report has had some pretty stinging things to say about the way that superannuation has been treated by APRA. The roughest thing really is that member returns have been found to take a back seat with regard to the APRA here, with other factors like broader financial stability taking more of a central front seat, if you will. So look, it's pretty stinging. 24 recommendations in total. APRA has said that the 19 levelled at it are all pretty fair and balanced, and it will take them on. The Federal Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, has said that the 5 handed his way are also reasonable and something that he'll be looking to implement. APRA says that if we want to do this, we are going to need more funding, and that's something that Frydenberg has said that is going to have to be looked at in the next budget.
Chris, it's interesting. Obviously, we've been scathing of the banking sector after the Royal Commission.
Yes.
They've had huge cultural issues, and APRA obviously has got its own to deal with. But fundamentally, it remains one of the strongest banking sectors in the world. It helped see us through the global financial crisis. And I think APRA played a part in that as well, as did other regulators. Surely there are still some strong elements to this particular regulator that need to be considered as well.
I totally agree with you, Kieran, and I think it's a mistake to go too hard at APRA right now. They have seen us through some hard times. Look, with regard to the Royal Commission, that's certainly the last time that Wayne Byres was put through this sort of ringer and put under the microscope as he was. I think one of the main things that people will still be remembering was when Michael Hodge QC said, well, what happens when we leave the trustees alone in the dark with our money? Can they be trusted? And that was kind of one of the really key quotes out of the whole thing. And now we've just found out that, well, after this 146-page review, even if they can't be trusted, can the superannuation overseeing body, the regulator, be trusted to penalise them? And I think the real criticism here is that it's been too kind of, I guess, communicative and handled behind the scenes, whereas they're hoping for a more kind of a more aggro, a bit more argy-bargy from the regulator here, and that's something that seems to be the way forward. It would appear.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's been that pressure on ASIC too for kind of that more open transparency in their operations. But on a slightly lighter note, we've seen the Perth Mint taking centre stage in New York, a 1-ton Australian gold coin. Tell us about it.
That's right. Well, on the lighter note, but also on the significantly heavier note, this is a $64 million giant Australian $2 coin, which was left outside the New York Stock Exchange all day. Now, as you said, it weighs 1 tonne. Richard Hayes, who is the CEO of the Perth Mint, hauled it all the way from Perth, and the idea of this is to raise awareness for the ETF that is backed by the Perth Mint. They're saying that it's the only gold-focused ETF that has the support of a government. Now, look, it's 80 centimetres wide, this thing, and 13 centimetres thick. So for all the gold buffs out there, 32,000 troy ounces, and of course the price of gold has recently struck a 6-year high. So the big question was, well, is somebody going to pinch this thing? This is a huge liability. Somebody's going to haul it off down the New York Stock Exchange, down Wall Street. And that has actually happened before. Canada once made a giant gold coin, and it was loaned to the Berlin Museum, and it was stolen. So, so this sort of thing is pretty interesting as far as you know, a bit of awareness raising here, but certainly some risk involved, you would have thought.
Well, it's funny you say that, because the Perth Mint actually has a challenge where if you can pick up a gold brick, you get to keep it, because it's so heavy no one can do it. So maybe they're relying on the same insurance.